So I've learned when I give a talk, I should always say the title, and then I can talk about whatever I want, but you'll feel like you came and heard what you came for. Okay. So our title is Connected in a Divided World, Values and Commonalities That Hold Us Together as a Society. Laura always comes up with fantastic titles and very good topics, very timely topics to talk about. So I want to thank Laura and everybody else involved for organizing this, and also Coeur d'Alene Dharma Friends. And off we go. So I always like to start things with just sitting quietly, because most of us have been running around all day, and it's nice just to sit and watch our breath for a moment, let our mind calm down, kind of empty our thoughts out, and then we can really listen. Okay? So if you put your feet flat on the floor, put your hands in your lap, okay? And just be aware of your body for a moment. And if there's tension anywhere in your body, then let that go. And then just become aware of your breath. Don't deep breathe, just let your breath be in a natural, pattern the way it is. But pay attention to what's happening as you inhale, as you exhale. Feel how the breath connects you to the rest of the universe and connects you to life. If you get distracted by a sound or a sensation or a thought, just notice that, but come back home to the breath. And so by keeping your mind on one object, in this case, the breath, then let the mind become more peaceful. So we'll do that just for a couple of minutes. And then before we begin, let's take a moment and think about our motivation for being here. So just ask yourself, what was my motivation for coming here? There's no right or wrong answer. Just try and, investigate what was my motivation for coming here to this talk. Whatever your motivation may have been to begin with, let's try and expand it. And together think that we will share this evening so that we can improve ourselves and generate our good qualities. And to do that so we can make a positive contribution to society and a positive contribution to the world and to the living beings in it. So let's place what we're about to do within the framework of compassion, not wanting living beings to suffer, and love, wanting them to have happiness. And just take a moment and cultivate that motivation so that we'll all be on the same page in terms of why we are here. So when I was thinking about this topic, I've thought a lot of different things about this topic, actually. Because I think, as human beings, we have many, many shared values. Yeah? Across cultures, across religions, across ethnic groups, racial groups, and so on. I think many shared values I think we all value life. We all value being kind. We value forgiveness, generosity, ethical conduct. We all think love and compassion are good. Yeah. Because I think these kind of values, wherever you go on the planet, whether you're in a society where there's religious people or people that don't have any religion, these kind of values are always there, and parents teach them to their kids. Yeah? Didn't you learn this stuff when you were little? Yeah, share your toys. Yeah, don't hit your brother or sister. Yeah. Yes, you want that chocolate bar, but so does your friend. How about splitting it? Yeah, doesn't matter where we are. We grow up with these same kind of things. So then, when I thought about that, yeah, we have so many similar values. So, what's our problem? Yeah, I think part of our problem is we don't always live by our values. Yeah? We have values, but when it comes to making a decision or deciding what to do, we don't always use our values as the criteria to help us make that decision. What our criteria is usually how can I get the best for myself? Do you think that operates in your life? Yeah. We have wonderful values. But push comes to shove, it's me first, and then my group, everybody who agrees with me, everybody who looks like me, everybody who thinks like me. Yeah. And that's the most important thing. And everybody else, as long as they don't bother me, I really don't care about them. And when they do bother me, then I care enough to make them suffer, or at least to want them to suffer. But that doesn't look so good to say I want other people to suffer, even though that's what I want, because they're interfering with my happiness. So then I make up all sorts of philosophies and political ideologies to justify what I'm doing, so that I don't have to really confront the fact that I'm self-centered. So then we get the whole philosophy of, I'm doing this for, the benefit of the country. Yeah? I'm trying to benefit the country. It's very interesting. I just finished the other day a book called The Second Coming of the KKK. Yeah? So this book, it doesn't talk much about the first KKK. We kind of all know about that. The guys who were vigilantes and went out and, tried to harm people of other races and other cultures, make it so that they can't vote, make it so that they have difficulties making a living. That was the first KKK, okay? And they kept who they were pretty secret, but they got the juries and the police on their side anyway. Then, I don't know if you know any of this, I found it fascinating. Then there was a revival of the KKK around, the early 20th century. 1918, 1919, 1920, until like, 20, 26, 27, 28, a revival of the KKK. And the KKK was mainstream. It was a completely legit organization in American society. Yeah. Bigoted and all. And it was very interesting because I'm sure those people felt, we're kind people. We want to help other people. Yeah, they even had a women's branch of the KKK that did a lot of charity work. They had pageants, they held fairs, they had all sorts of social activities that they invited people to. In the book, there's this picture of, at one of the fairs they had, of a Ferris wheel. Yeah, and they invited the KKK people and population in general, and there's all these people in their white things with their faces covered on a Ferris wheel. Yeah, it's amazing, and they had charity balls and the whole thing. And these people felt like, in their minds, they felt like we are saving America. America is in dire threat, yeah, not only from African Americans, but also from Chinese and Japanese, and Catholics, and of course Jews. So in their minds, their way of thinking was, we are protecting America. Yeah, because America is a land that belongs to the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, who are the chosen people that God gave America to. Yeah, because whatever, all throughout the world, whatever you do, God is on your side. I think poor God gets so confused. He's supporting ISIS, and he's supporting the US, and he's supporting Assad, and he's supporting the rebels. And, because everybody has God on their side. I mean, if you were God, you would wouldn't you tell them, all these guys to flake off? Isn't that using God's name in vain? Yeah? But this is what they did. And they were extremely patriotic. America first. Yeah? And America belongs to the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants and highlighted men, but they let the women come too. Yeah, because you need babies. So, to replenish yourself. But it's fascinating to study their way of thinking, because they really sincerely felt, like America was going downhill, and that, they had to protect it. Because this was before the McCarthy era. So, we know when the McCarthy era was, everybody was a commie who was taking down America. But this was the 1920s. Who was taking down America? The Catholics, because their allegiance was to the Pope. So there were all sorts of conspiracy theories that the Pope was sending the Catholics into America to infiltrate so that America could be taken over by the Vatican. Seriously, this is what they believed and what they told people. Yeah. So they were anti-Catholic. They were anti-Jews, because the Jewish cheat everybody in business anyway. Okay. Then blacks, kind of they don't even need to explain why they're anti-black, you know. And the same with Asians. And it was very interesting. The KKK was pro-prohibition. Yeah. And they thought that America was becoming morally decadent. Yeah. Because people were drinking, because in the big cities there was the roaring 20s. Yeah. And so there was corruption in the government. Yeah. There were people, they hated Hollywood for making all these movies. They thought cars were not to be trusted because cars gave couples privacy to do naughty things. Yeah. And they had this fantasy of the golden age of America. Yeah, before the Civil War. And can we go back to what America used to be when it was great? Yeah. If some things sound familiar, they are. Yeah. So what this book really brought out for me is that there's certain things in American history that have always been threads, yeah, that have come up and been strong and then faded for a while. And the author made the comment that white supremacy was an American value from the very first moment that white people set their feet on this continent. Yeah. I saw a program about Lewis and Clark, yeah, the guys that the college is named for. And there was one scene when, because they encountered many Native Americans, but were they dressed up in their American military regalia, with the hats and the whistles and the medals and all this stuff, and went to, I forget which tribe it was, but handed them a thing that said, "We are claiming this land, and you are now guests on it." And the Native Americans are going, "Who are these guys?" Yeah? But they felt totally competent. We are America. We're claiming this land for America. And so is exactly, the idea of the KKK. And they really thought we are protecting the country from all these other people. Conspiracy theories were rampant. And what really came out in this book was, guess what? Fake news. Yeah, the KKK was spreading all sorts of rumors and fake news to validate their position. And then they were so clever and they had a fraternity, a sorority, they did these fairs and things for children, and they brought people in like mad, so that belonging to the KKK in the 20s was a status symbol. This was a status symbol, yeah? So the American values that I was taught as a kid, yeah, I grew up in the 50s. Some of you look like you did too. Yeah. But the values, but I think, what we're taught in school, the values, it's probably pretty much the same through all generations. Yeah. And I believed those values when they taught them to me as a kid. And I didn't realize that so many people in the country spouted those values, but lived according to other values, thinking that what they were doing was good. Because the KKK, what they really emphasized in the 20s was being 100% American. Yeah. And it wasn't just what we were exporting. It was the people who had to be a member of KKK, you had to be 100% American. Okay? White, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant. Yeah. And those people were the core of the country and were going to save the country from all of its moral decadency with alcohol and Broadway and Hollywood and back seats of cars. Okay. So it's so interesting because I'm sure those people didn't say to themselves, I'm a bigot. Yeah. They said, I'm patriotic, because that was a really strong emphasis in KKK, to be extremely patriotic. Yeah, I don't think they had the little flag buttons back then, but they should have. Yeah. And you had to show your patriotism, or else you were suspect. Yeah. So here we are, as human beings, we're taught the same values. Yeah. As children growing up in America. Yeah. How many of you grew up in America? Most people. How many didn't grow up in America? Yeah. Number of people. Yeah. So what are the values? What you're taught when you're a kid? Yeah. Patriotism. Yeah. Which nowadays means that you can't kneel when they sing the Star-Spangled Banner. Um, we were taught that this is a country of immigrants. Remember that? And remember the Statue of Liberty, and give me your poor and give me your hungry, give me everybody who's persecuted, and we welcome all of you, and come here and have freedom and work and do good for your family and do good for the country. And, remember when I was taught that as a child? Yeah, my grandparents were all immigrants. Yeah, fleeing persecution. And I thought, wow, what an incredible thing this country is, that people from all over the world who are facing famine or persecution or political problems or whatever, that they can come here and live peacefully and be welcome. I was a little kid, and that's what they taught me, and that's what I believed. Yeah? And then I became a teenager, and they were telling me that we're killing people in Vietnam so we can live in peace. And I said, wait a minute. Yeah, that doesn't sound like what I learned in first and second and third and fourth and fifth grade. That's not what you taught me to believe in, that this country was. Yeah. What's going on here? And so, yeah, this has always remained a question for me. So I'm putting it out as a question to you too. I'm not here to give you any answers. But, we grow up with values as a country, with ethical values as human beings. And then somehow, in the name of living for our values, we harm people. And we harm the planet and the environment. And so I'm always like scratching, well, I can't scratch my hair, but scratch my head about, well, what's going on? Yeah. And especially in reading this book about the KKK, because our title here is about what values do we share that bring us together. And I saw a whole different set of values that those people had that brought them together. Yeah. And of course, it's not the kind of values I have, nor do I want to have those kind of values. Yeah. Lots of people in the 20s, like I said, they became socially acceptable. It was a status symbol to belong to KKK. Many ministers, oh, this is another thing that's interesting. Evangelical ministers, so many of them joined or supported the KKK. Yeah? People of God who are supposed to be doing Jesus' work and be kind to the unfortunate were joining the KKK and doing all these revivals around the country, spreading KKK ideology. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm always puzzled. Yeah. Because what held them together were their values. Yeah, especially the fact that they had a common enemy. There is nothing like a common enemy to bring a group of people together. Yeah. All you need is a common enemy, everybody comes together. But there's got to be more than a common enemy. Yeah. There's got to be more than that. Yeah. So what is it that brings us together as Americans? Or what is it that brings us together as citizens of the planet? Yeah. And I'm not trying to bring a, this is dire and, the country is going to waste kind of mood to everybody. It's not my intention. It's to help us question, what in our hearts can connect us to other people. Yeah, besides having common enemies. Yeah. Let's stop using common enemies as the way to bring a group of people together. Okay. Let's think of something positive that brings us together. So one thing in Buddhism, that we talk about a lot, there's one meditation called the equanimity meditation. And this one is, I find, very powerful because what it does is it asks us to look at how we view other people, because we tend to break people into three categories. Friends, who are the people who we like, who have the same ideas, who help us, who support us and encourage us and will be on our side. Enemies, and I don't necessarily mean Osama bin Laden here, I mean anybody who interferes with our happiness. Yeah, I'm just using the word enemy in a very broad way. Anybody who interferes with our happiness, who we basically don't like. And then the third category is strangers, people we don't know. So when we see friends, yeah, what comes? Good feelings. Yeah, we feel connected to friends, don't we? Yeah, we want to be around them. We think alike. We support each other. And we become attached to each other. Yeah. Enemies can't stand. Yeah, we're angry. We hate them. Yeah, we're biased against them, but we're too polite to say so. Because it's not us that's biased, it's them that's defective. That's what the KKK said, you know? We're not biased, those people are just defective. Yeah, because also, I forgot this, they believed in, how do you say it, eugenics? Yeah? So they were talking about sterilizing the people who were deemed undesirable and so forth. So the enemy can't stand them, want to get rid of them. And then strangers who we don't know, who we don't care about. So our emotions go from attachment to friends, anger to enemies, apathy to strangers. Okay? But if we step back and look at this, and you know, in our day-to-day life, this seems completely reasonable, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem reasonable? You love your friends, you can't stand your enemies, but you put it in nice language. And everybody else, as long as they don't get in your way, you don't care much about them. Okay? But as soon as they pull into your parking space that you were going to get, then they go into the enemy category. Okay? So what happens is these categories seem quite real, and it seems very natural to have these emotions towards these three groups of people. In fact, this is what we are taught to have. Yeah? We're taught, be attached to these people. These people are part of our group. Stick with them. Yeah. What's your mascot here? What's the name of North Idaho? What? Cardinals. Birds. The birds, the cardinals? Oh, I would have thought it would be something like cougars. Okay. But we're all, because cougars live in this area. Yeah. So the North Idaho Cardinals, we are all Cardinals. So we stick together and we root for do you have a football team? Do you have a basketball team? What do you have? What do you root for? Yeah, I got to root for somebody. We know what Gonzaga does. Yeah. How about you people? What do you root for? Well, maybe you root for birds. Okay. But anyway, so there's this identity that comes from being at the same school. You support each other. Okay. And, and it just seems quite natural. Yeah. Most of you are probably, is it Idahoans? Idahoans? And then Washingtonians? Yeah. And so we have, some idea of our state, and we root for our state. Yeah, Washington is much better. Yeah, I feel sorry for you people who live in Idaho, Yeah, we have better health care. Yeah, anyway, so, we feel some kind of our group, we're attached to our group. Yeah, of course, people move back and forth across the border, so they get there confused, But, and it seems quite natural. But when you look at it, when you step back, When we were born, when we were born, everyone was in the stranger category. Everyone. Even our parents. Yeah. Everybody was in the stranger category. We didn't know anybody when we were born. And isn't it amazing that all these years later, we're still alive because people who were total strangers took care of us? Yeah. Our parents were or whoever brought you up, aunts, uncles, grandparents, foster homes, whoever it was, they were initially strangers. And all these strangers took care of us and fed us. Yeah. We went to school. All of our teachers were initially strangers. And then they helped us to learn to speak and to read and write and do all sorts of things that we didn't know when we were born. And then some of those strangers became friends. Some of them, maybe kids across the street you didn't like became enemies for a while. But then did you notice that some of the kids that you were really good friends with when you were in first and second grade, and they were in the friend category that you were attached to, then you lost touch with, so now they're back in the stranger category, and you don't really know or care much what happens to them. Yeah, until you look them up on Facebook. Or some of the people who were friends go into the enemy category. Yeah. You meet a stranger, you fall in love and get married. So friend, you go from stranger to friend attachment, and then immediately to enemy when you get divorced. Then maybe to stranger again. Then you become maybe friends again. You know, what I'm getting at is all these relationships change, and they keep changing. And yet, at any particular moment, we think these relationships are permanent and unchanging. And whoever is a friend is always going to be one. Whoever is an enemy, we are always going to hate. Yeah? And whoever is a stranger will always feel that way towards them. And yet, that is not our lived experience, is it? Our lived experience is that we receive help from strangers throughout our entire life. Yeah. When we were driving here, on I-90, there was a sign, construction, night construction, So here are these people who are going to be out on I-90 in the cold, in the middle of the night, working on the highway so that we have a road to drive on. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Yeah? Would you go work on a highway in the middle of the night to benefit other people? Yeah. The middle of the night when it's cold, I want to be in bed. Yeah. So, when we look around everywhere, there's people helping us. And most of those people we don't even know. When you go to the grocery store, maybe after you've been to the same store for a while, you know the people in the checkout counter. But at the beginning, you don't know who they are. Yeah. Do you know the people who stocked the shelves? Or the people who drove the truck with the food in it? Or what about the farmers? What about the farm workers? Yeah? When we have fruit, we have vegetables. Who picked the fruit? Yeah? Were those people happy? Do they have good conditions? Do we even think of them and care about them? Or do we more just think about the quality of the fruit that we're getting? And yet, without them doing what they're doing, yeah, all those people in the whole food chain, bringing, farming and transporting and everything, without all of their efforts, we wouldn't have food. Yeah. Yet, if we hear that those people have different political ideas than we do, ugh, isn't it? Yeah? So here are these kind people who put their life energy into helping us have food and clothing and shelter. But when we hear that they support a certain candidate or a certain policy, yeah, we turn our backs on them. Yeah, quite interesting, isn't it? Yeah, we don't really see things very accurately. Yeah, we don't really see what is going on that helps us to sustain our lives and how many other people are involved in that. And not only in this country, but in other countries. Now that when they're talking about, renegotiating NAFTA and all of that stuff, and then you suddenly learn, oh, this car that, I drive in and take for granted, actually, some of the parts of the car have gone back and forth across different borders many times. This, the electronic stuff is made of in China and it comes here, but then we give it to Mexico and something happens there and it comes back to the US, and another part comes from Canada, and then that whole thing goes back to Mexico, and then they do it, and then it comes back here with a few other parts, maybe from Japan and or some other country, put in. And then we just go to the car dealers or the Craigslist and we get a car. And do we really, how many people from how many different countries, in what kind of labor conditions, with what kind of lives are contributing to our having a car? Yeah, it's really kind of mind-blowing. And then when you read the labels on your clothes, yeah, usually we just read the label about how to wash them. But read the label about where the clothes were made. Yeah? And a lot of our clothes are made in Bangladesh now, or India, or China. Yeah. But especially in Bangladesh, and probably India too, not very good working conditions. Because we read about these fires uh, in the factories, the sewing factories in Bangladesh. Yeah. My grandmother, when she came to the States, that's what she did in New York. She worked in one of those factories. Yeah. Same lousy conditions back then. Yeah. Now, better conditions, but still not great. So here are all these people from all over the world who don't look like us, who don't speak the same language as us, who are different religions, who eat different kind of food, from different ethnic groups, of different races, and yet our having a jacket or our having a car depends on all those people and their efforts. Yeah. And it's mind-blowing when you think about it. But it really makes you think, wow, I receive so much from all these other people. And yet, now we're going to send the U.S. Army to patrol the border with Mexico so that all these people who benefit me cannot come in here. I'm still scratching my head, you know? So I think, that's one thing I've really gotten from Buddhism is this open view of look at the way things are and see how dependent we are on others' kindness. And it makes us aware, at least it made me aware, of how little I appreciate that and how little I appreciate what other people do. I just take it for granted. Yeah, there's a chair here. Yeah, and there's a cup, and there's a bell, and a thermos, and this thing. Yeah, but how many people went into making these things? And what are their lives like? And they all want to be happy just like me, and none of them want to suffer just like me. And we're all exactly the same in that respect. We all need food to eat. We all need to sleep. We all like to have friends. We all like to live in a peaceful place. Yeah, those are things that are shared by human beings all over the planet and by animals too. And yet we're so blind to them. So I think that's what we need to come back to, to really see our the universality of human experience and not just look superficially at how we're different, but to look into people's hearts and see how we're the same. And then to see how much we've received from others. Yeah. And then you kind of ask yourself, at least I do, well, I've received so much, what have I given? What have I given? And I look, I mean, I can hardly do anything practical. Yeah, I can change a light bulb. Today I changed the cartridge in my printer. That's about all I can do, okay? So what have I contributed to all these other people who have made all these things everywhere around me that I have no idea at all how to make? Yeah. So it brings, it doesn't mean we all have to run around and try and be Mother Teresa, but it just means to reflect what kind of motivation do I have when I move in the world? Yeah, I've received so much. Do I have a motivation of kindness when I go out in public and I'm with other people? At least, do I have a motivation not to harm them and to be kind to them? And do I deliberately cultivate that motivation? Because if I don't deliberately cultivate it and renew it and familiarize myself with it again and again and again, what happens? What am I most familiar with? Me first. There's something good to have, I'll take it. There's a problem, you can have it. Yeah? So it involves this actually quite deep in our own heart change, at least in our motivation. And our motivation is actually the most important thing that affects what we do in the world. Which is why at the very beginning of the talk, we started out cultivating our motivation. Yeah, because that's the most important thing. What is going on in our mind, in our heart? How do we come to a situation? And so I think it's that attitude of kindness that can help us connect to other people. Then you're going to say, well, what happens if those people aren't kind back to me? I'm renewing my kind motivation every morning and those people aren't. And they're taking advantage of me. Yeah. And they're doing this and they're doing that and they're doing the other thing. Why should I be kind back? Well, first of all, what good does being mean back to them do? Yeah? Okay? They aren't reciprocating our kindness. Does it benefit them? Does it benefit us if we're mean back to them? What happens when you're mean to somebody? Do they come back and say, oh, I love you so much? I'm sorry I harmed you. I want to be friends now that you've been mean to me. Yeah. You've just dropped a bomb on my country. Please, can we be friends? I love you. Yeah. Yeah. When we harm other people, they harm us right back. So they're unhappy, and they do things that make us more unhappy. And yet it's so strange, isn't it? That when somebody harms us, we think that harming them back is going to fix the situation. And this is how our country operates too, unfortunately. Yeah? It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help anybody. Yeah? So then you might say, but I feel good when I harm them back. Yeah. Why? Because then I have power. They harmed me, or I was kind to them and they didn't appreciate it. So then I feel weak. When I harm them back, then I feel powerful. Yeah? So you feel powerful. My question is, so what? Yeah? You harm somebody and you feel powerful? You rejoice that you got even? You inflicted somebody suffering on somebody else and you rejoice? And I'm supposed to admire that? Yeah, that's not behavior I admire. Uh-uh. And then I also wonder, because I've done it too. You harm somebody back to get even. And then how do you feel about yourself later? Initially you feel, oh, I'm so powerful, I got even. But then how do we feel about ourselves? When we're alone, when we're not putting on our arrogant trip in front of other people. How do we feel about ourselves? Oh, I'm such a wonderful person. I made somebody suffer and I'm happy about it. Huh? No, I don't think that's what makes us feel good about ourselves. Yeah? So we really need to stop and think here. You know? Yeah. What really are the causes of happiness? And what are the causes of suffering? And which kind of causes are we creating? Because we're all very intertwined, interconnected. Yeah. So it's not like if I harm you, you're the only one that suffers, that I don't suffer. No, if I harm you, I'm creating the cause for me to suffer. Yeah. So if you believe in karma, that's one way. But also in this life, if I harm you, yeah, I'm creating the causes for you to not like me and to probably retaliate. So it's not like there's a fixed pie of happiness and I got to get it for myself before anybody else gets it. Yeah. Because if there's good things to be had and we share them with everybody, then all of us benefit. Yeah. So we all know nowadays that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. They said that when I was growing up too, but now the stats are really showing the difference, in economic uh, security or insecurity between people in this country. So when we have that big of a split, is that conducive for peace? Yeah. Remember when you studied history? you know, all the history classes you took? What was one of the biggest causes for war? What was one of the biggest causes for social discord? Yeah, economic inequity. Yeah. Of course, they used to, cover it, clothe it in, well, we're this religion and they're that religion. And so, all of this stuff. If you study European history, every generation they were killing each other in the name of God, but underneath it all was economic stuff. Yeah. And of course, honor. And it just, creates so much suffering. Whereas if, we could have more equality across the board, then we would live in a society where people are happier. And then if we live near happy people, that influences us, doesn't it? It makes our life easier. If we live near unhappy people, our life is more miserable. So that's why His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, if you want to be selfish, be wisely selfish and take care of others. Because if you take care of others and they're happy, then there won't be social discord and violence and so on. That makes us suffer. Mm-hmm. So it's this whole thing of, trying to really open our eyes to what the big picture is and open our hearts to other living beings in the same way.
So you were saying how you think like the people who work on the roads are doing that to help people? What would you think about money? Do you think they're just doing that to get paid because it's their job, or do you think it's to benefit the whole world?
Yeah. So, yes, they get paid for their job, but the bottom line is if they didn't do their work, I would suffer. Yeah. So, their motivation for working is not what we look at, it's the fact that they put their human energy and time into doing things that I benefit from.
Thank you.
Okay? So we don't cross-examine them, what was your motivation for making this car? Oh, it's not a good motivation. I'm not going to buy your car. No. Okay?
Can you speak a little bit about what it takes for a young man to become radicalized so easily from the internet? What are they thinking about their values, and why is it so easy for some young, particularly men, to just become radicalized?
Okay. Well, I think what people are starting to point out now, and excuse me, guys, is that there's a real problem with boys. Yeah, who are the shooters? The school shooters. Who, why do we have so many more men in prison than we have women? Why are the young men being radicalized and not so much the women? So I think this is a big question that we need to look into. I think there's a few different things. One of the prominent, I think, is society's view of what it means to be a man and the whole idea of manliness. Yeah. And this is actually one thing that came up about the Ku Klux Klan. Why so many men were attracted to it in the 20s? Because you had a society where there were more and more white-collar jobs. So you didn't have, the guys weren't working as farmers as much, in factories as much, doing physical things that made them feel like he-men. They were sitting in offices and their muscles were getting flabby. Yeah, okay. Don't throw tomatoes at me, please. Actually, you can, it matches. So, but, so somehow the KKK, with this patriotic, secret fraternity with their secret passwords and secret gestures and exclusivity, made all the guys feel like they were really men, And also because their philosophy was, the women stay at home and they have to protect the women. So you have this kind of old idea of men, which is still prevalent today. Yeah, the man as the protector, as the strong one, as the one who leads in society, who own women, who can do whatever they want and touch whatever they want, And that's the view of it. And yet, that's not the reality we're living in. We're living in, I think it's really shaking society a lot that there's so many women in the workplace. Because the workplace used to be the old boys club, and now there's women in it. Yeah. And the home used to be run by the woman, and the guys didn't have to do their laundry or anything, and now they have to. So I think there's kind of this identity crisis. I don't know this is just my theory. I think there's that going on, yeah, that men aren't quite sure what it means to be a man. Also, because they're brought up from youth as, boys don't cry. Yeah, boys don't cry. What do? They punch somebody. Yeah, you can't cry. You have to go out and stick up for yourself. And that kind of education of what it means to be a guy starts when they're little. I mean, I remember being with one family, and the mother her son was maybe, I don't know, 18 months old, and he was crying, and she was saying, boys don't cry. This is a kid who's 18 months old, let him cry. So I think there's this thing where guys don't know really how to be in touch with their emotions and handle their emotions. And so emotions come up, but you're not supposed to express them, and you're supposed to have this image. Yeah, look at that. And so I think that gets to be kind of confusing. So especially you have adolescents, yeah, which is when so many of them get radicalized. And adolescence is already horrible enough, isn't it? Yeah. One person told me one reason they wanted to get out of samsara and stop rebirth is so that they wouldn't have to be an adolescent again. I mean, your hormones are going crazy. You don't know what you believe. You don't understand your body. Yeah, you're trying to be an adult, but you don't know what that means. And we live in a world where, roles are changing and identities are changing, and how economic structures are changing and everything's changing very quickly. And now with technology especially so. And so there's this feeling of instability. Who am I? Where do I fit in this place? Because I don't look like, and I don't think like the image that is presented to me. And so there's this feeling of insecurity. And so, a religion comes along that promises you an identity, a purpose, heaven with a lot, with everything you always wanted in heaven that you couldn't get here. And it gives you a meaning and purpose, and it makes you look powerful. So why not? Yeah, that's my theory. I don't know. You may have other ideas. So one of the things I think that would help it, the whole situation, is we need more funding in schools for after school activities, for sports activities, artistic things, crafts. We need to invest in young people and give them a purpose and meaning besides exercising their thumbs all day. Yeah? And that means that as citizens, we have to vote for taxes that will supply this. So maybe it means you have a little bit more money, but then you can live in a world that's happier. Oh, sorry. Thank you. You have a little less money. I'm glad somebody's listening. Yeah. But you live in a world that's happier.
I'd like to know, how
yeah.
would you suggest we break through biases and prejudices that we've been conditioned to and have been taught for our entire lives?
I couldn't hear.
How can we break through biases and prejudices that have been taught to us that we've just internally kind of
Okay.
grabbed onto?
Excellent question. First of all, I think realizing that we have bias and prejudices that have been taught to us. First of all, just even realizing that is huge. Because when you grow up in and everybody thinks in the same way, then you don't even realize these are biases and prejudices. You just think this is the way it is. Yeah? I remember when I went and I was living in Nepal, and I thought everybody should be democratic because, everybody should have, every society should be a democracy because that's the way I was taught here. But democracy doesn't fit in all cultures and all societies. You need a certain kind of population to have a democracy. So just even realizing that you have this kind of bias is a big step. Then, second step is to say, this is just conditioning. This is what I've been taught. This is what I've been conditioned to believe in. I was taught it and conditioned when I was young, when I didn't have a chance to really assess and evaluate what I was being taught. I was a kid, I just learned it and accepted it. But now I'm an adult. Yeah, as a kid, I couldn't evaluate, I couldn't choose. Now I can evaluate, I can choose. And I see that this is bias and prejudice. And I see that this is not the kind of person I want to be. Yeah. So these are our values or ideas or whatever. I am going to leave them aside now. Now, of course, saying that to yourself is one thing, but these things have been implanted deeply. So it means going over and over whoever we're biased and prejudiced against, thinking about their kindness, thinking about their contribution to society, remembering that everybody in a certain group is not exactly the same. Yeah. Would you want to be judged according to everybody in your group? Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah. So just again and again, to recondition ourselves with a different view. Yeah, these are human beings. They want to be happy. They want to not suffer, just like me. We're exactly the same. Yeah, and again and again and again to come back to that. And then going out and making friends with people in that group helps a lot too.
What was one thing that happened in your life that deeply hurt you, and how are you able to cope with that with such raw emotions and raw feelings?
Okay. When you say something that deeply hurt me, could it be any time in my life?
Yeah, anytime. Something that really shaped your life or really made you question yourself and your life.
That was done to me. Actually in my life, what made me question things most was not something that was done to me, but the society I grew up in. The Vietnam War affected me very, very deeply. Yeah. Is that a good example to use, or do you want me to choose a more personal thing?
Anything really. It's just more like how you were able to deal with that and like move forward.
Okay. Well, let me choose another thing. Okay?
Okay.
Because, yeah. So when I was in 7th grade, okay, so I was brought up Jewish, and I was taught, there are people who are anti-Semitic, who aren't going to like you because you're Jewish. But I hadn't really experienced any of it. I had read a lot about the Holocaust. I knew that somewhere in family in Europe that there were people that were related to me that died in the Holocaust, but I had never really felt anything much. Okay, myself, personal. I knew my dad had faced it, you know. But then one day in seventh grade, uh, we were sharing news stories or something. And I don't know, somehow the topic of Israel came up. And one boy stood up and said, all the Jews should get out of this country. And I didn't realize it until the other day that basically I was being told, go back where you came from. Like many people are being told nowadays, that was basically the message. Except, of course, I was born in America. Like many of the people nowadays who are being told to go back where they came from, they were born here. Okay? So I was in seventh grade. I had been taught that I should be offended, that I should be upset, that people talking like that was not right. And so I ran out of my seventh grade classroom, spent most of the day in the girls' bathroom sobbing, hysterically. Sobbing, 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 sobbing. And what's interesting is I don't remember exactly what happened in the days after that. I knew I didn't want to go back in that classroom and see him. And of course, I made a vow never to speak to him again, even though we were in the same classes in seventh grade, eighth grade, and all through high school. I am never speaking to him again. He is evil incarnate. Yeah. And so I went through with that kind of hatred and grudge for a long time until I realized that I don't want to have an identity of persecution. I don't want my identity to be one of being a victim, of being persecuted. Yeah. I reject that identity. That is not who I am. That is not who I want to be. Yeah. And so, so I became Buddhist. No, that's not the reason why I became Buddhist. That's not the reason. But, yeah, I said, this is not the kind of person I want to be, who carries a grudge like that.
When I'm thinking of someone of a different political party, I've kind of got myself trained sometimes, at least later on. I can say, okay, I'm judging them. That means I'm having a need that's not being met. And I can kind of identify what my need is for social justice or equality or liberty or freedom or equal opportunity. But, the big but is, but the way they vote and the way they believe is against all my values. And then I'm just stuck there.
Yeah.
And I try to go back and work it through the needs again, but I really get stuck when I think that their beliefs are affecting my happiness, the happiness of immigrants or my friends or whoever. So maybe you can help me move beyond that stuckness.
Yeah. So, it's very easy in that kind of situation to have a mind that thinks us and them. Yeah. And I have these good values for social justice and, the world and equality. And these people are like degenerate and horrible values. Yeah. But then again, step back and say, but we're all human beings. We all want to be happy. We don't want to suffer. We're all facing aging, sickness, and death. We all have our own insecurities. Why are these people believing in this kind of thing? Because somehow it's meeting a need of theirs. And if that need could be met in a different way, if those people were happy, then they wouldn't be thinking like that and voting like that. So these people are not cast in stone with concrete political views that can never be changed. Yeah, they're just, yeah, really, this is true. I heard somebody go, oh, yeah. I mean, talking about changing political views, the Prez is the complete epitome of it, isn't he? He changes his mind and policy like this. So the rest of us can too. So to really think, they're trying to be happy. They don't know what the causes of happiness are. Yeah. They don't think that they're harming others. They think that they're benefiting their own family and their own group. Yeah. So can I have some compassion? Wishing that they have wisdom, wishing that they have compassion, that their needs get met. Yeah. And so to try and think about what you could send them, just even mentally, and what could you give them? What values would you like to give them? What happiness could you give them? Or imagine them being happy, and then how many of their views would be very different than the way they are now. So you have to work at it, but we can change how we look at these people. Mm-hmm. This will be the last question.
Kind of a comment
Oh,
also,
sure.
in that, I think what tends to happen is we one-dimensionalize people.
Yep.
And if you one-dimensionalize someone as their political views, then you don't recognize, as you said, the other contributions that they're making to ourselves and to others. And so I think one of the most important things is to recognize that someone can have different political views, but that is not the sum and substance of who they are.
Exactly.
And so to acknowledge and accept that there's other attributes that they bring that are positive,
Yeah.
and make contributions. And
Yeah.
I think we all tend to do that way too much, to just label and one-dimensionalize and reject others and label them. And that goes all directions. All political parties, all races, all ethnicities do that to one another.
Yeah.
And to recognize that as well. It's not just, this group that does that.
Right. Well said. Thank you. And to also realize that if we met that person in a different situation, we would have a totally different relationship with them. Yeah. If you stumbled when you were crossing the street and fell down, that person would probably come and help pick you up. And then you would start a friendship. And you wouldn't care about what political views they had, because they were a kind person who came and picked you up when you stumbled in the street. So, just different times and ways of meeting people, we can have very different relationships. Okay, let's sit quietly for just a minute and digest what we've heard. Kind of think about it so you can take it home with you, and think about what you need to work on in your own life to broaden your own perspective and to open your heart. And then let's rejoice that we spent the evening together in this way. really thinking about something worthwhile, challenging ourselves, opening new doors on how to see people and how to see ourselves. Let's rejoice that what we all did here as individuals and also as a group. And then let's share the good energy that we created together. You can kind of imagine it as light in the center of your chest and send that out to all other living beings, especially the people that maybe you have some bias and prejudice against or don't like. And imagine that light touching them, sending them the good energy we created here, and it touching them and easing their pain and giving them hope and giving them a kind heart. Okay, so thank you very much, and you're welcome to come to the Abbey and visit us.